Welcome back to the Sports Playbook. We are your go-to for fast sport news, athlete stories, and insights. And today, this podcast is brought to you by NXT Football. And I'm not going to be lonely on today's podcast. I've got a special guest with me. It's our football specialist, but from NXT Football, Coach Dan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dan. We won't get too confused with the names, but thanks for having me. I'm Coach Dan from NXT Football. I run a football program out of the St. George Basin, working with young kids to develop them as footballers, as well as young kids themselves, so on and off the pitch. And recently have been appointed the technical director for the junior association part of Herschel Zagreb. So a really exciting time for me and for NXT. And looking forward to the podcast.
100%. And if you haven't already, make sure that you follow NXT Football on all social media, mainly Instagram, right? Where we're pushing at the moment. So make sure you chuck a follow there. So why Coach Dan and I here today? Well, some may not know, but the Asian Cup is literally around the corner. The first game is the 1st of March, where Australia will take on the Philippines. This tournament's kind of come up pretty quickly, hasn't it? It has snuck up.
Yep, it 100% has. As you touched on, it's starting in about a week's time. The first game for the Matildas is over in Perth. So 8 p.m. kickoff here, 5 p.m. kickoff over there, here being Sydney time. So, it's here. The players are ready. The team has been, or the squad has been chosen by the coach. And, we're ready for an Asian Cup off the back of a really successful Women's World Cup.
Yeah, and I think it'll be fascinating to see what kind of momentum is built off that. Like, will we see another big growth in women's football and participation? We definitely saw that. I think, see, like the Sam Kerr Football Centre in Perth and small things like that. Like, those are the obvious signs of it, but hopefully it keeps filtering down into the grassroots area.
100%. Yeah, I think we'll probably touch on it later, but the growth in women's sport is crazy, and football's definitely not lost to that growth.
100%. So just to confirm, the Asian Cup will start on the 1st of March. The final will be in Sydney, and that will be on the 21st of March. So it's a 3-week tournament. It's in and out. It's here and it's gone out of town. But how does the tournament work? So it'll be a little bit different to the FIFA Women's World Cup, where there was a lot more nations and countries involved in that. This is a lot more simplified. There is 3 groups of 4. So each team will play each other once. And then from that, this is where the teams will go through. So
basically what will happen is after they've all played each other, we'll have a look at the tables, and the top 2 teams will automatically progress from each group. And then something that started to come into football a few years, probably for close to a decade now, is the 3rd teams now have a chance. So if you come 3rd in your group, you're not lost to this anymore. So basically you'll have the top 2 go through, and then the third place teams will go through as well, but only 2 of them. So 3 groups, only 2 will go through, and then 4 teams will be eliminated. So we start with 12, 4 eliminated, and then we've got our quarterfinals raring and ready to go.
And so, Coach Dan, when you look at, say, a 3rd place team, if you have 2 teams that are on the same amount of points at the end of a regular draw, what then actually happens in that instance?
There's a couple of things that can happen. So it can go to goal difference, who scored more goals. It can also, sometimes it can get a bit finicky where they'll take the points away from the top team in the group, and then they'll see what has happened. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide for this AFC Women's Asian Cup. But the fact that there's 2 of the best 3rd places will go through pretty much gives everyone a sniff going into that last game.
It's very exciting, isn't it? Because even if obviously this is absolute worst case scenario and we don't want this to happen. But if Australia doesn't have a great start to the tournament, there is a chance they can make it through. Or equally, it's not even the conversation. They've won a couple of games and they're in the top 2 teams of their group.
Yeah, 100%. Let's go with the latter.
100%, mate. So let's run through the groups. We've got Group A. So Group A has the host nation being Australia, or the Tillies, however you call them. Australia, Iran, South Korea, and the Philippines.
Yep.
So of that group, we've actually gone ahead and put our predictions in, mainly Coach Dan, but I will follow them to a T. So do you want to let the viewers know where we think, I guess, the top 2 teams of Group A will come from?
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's hard to go past Australia, and then secondly, hard to go past South Korea. I think they go through as 1 and 2, preferably the Matildas as 1. And then look, between Iran and the Philippines, I think there's a little bit in that. I think one of those 2 definitely takes that third placed spot.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to know here is from an Asian Cup in 2022, so we're talking 4 years ago, just prior to the FIFA Women's World Cup, Australia actually got knocked out of the Asian Cup by South Korea in the quarters.
That's right.
1-0 or something like that.
Yeah, tight game. So yeah, hopefully when we play them this time round, it's a different outcome, and the Tillies can get up. But yeah, that's my prediction is Australia and South Korea, with a potential for the Philippines to take a third.
And we move on to Group B. So Group B has Bangladesh, China, Korea, DPR, and Uzbekistan. So who are we thinking here to be the top 2 nations?
Again, I think it's China and Korea DPR. China are actually the defending champs of this tournament. So also a big footballing nation when it comes in the Asian space. So for me, it's those 2. Not too sure if Bangladesh and Uzbekistan will come knocking for that third spot. Time will tell. But yeah, China and Korea for me.
And then we've got Group C, the final group. So we've got Chinese Taipei, India, Japan, and Vietnam. So I think we can probably safely lock in one of those countries, but I'll let Coach Dan confirm this one.
Yeah, no, that's... look, Japan for me is has to be top of this group. And then the second place here could go either way. You could be looking at Taipei, Vietnam, or it could also be India. They were a real surprise package to come into this one, managed to qualify, and they'll be putting their best foot forward.
It'll be, Group C is a bit of a question mark. We probably know who one of them is going to be, but the others
could go either way.
Potentially we'll see one of those third place teams come from Group C.
Yeah, I think so. And I think whoever gets through from Group C outside of Japan, it'll be unbelievable for that nation.
Yeah, it'll be massive news.
Yeah.
But naturally, both Coach Dan and I are a little bit biased. We are Australian, so we would love to see the Tillies go through. But I think it's just probably important to point out, I guess, where the Tillies stand in world football, but also from an Asian Cup point of view. So I guess from a FIFA rankings point of view, so this is all the nations, including everyone outside the Asian Cup. So Spain, Germany, America, you name it, all those. The Tillies are currently ranked 15th prior to the tournament.
Yep.
And there's 2 nations that are in the Asian Cup that are currently ranked ahead of the Tillies.
Yep.
And they are
Japan and Korea DPR. So both of those 2 currently in the top 10. Japan 8th and Korea DPR are 9th. So look, we go into the tournament as the 3rd best ranked nation. But there's a lot of skepticism in and around the rankings. It is all points based. It is heavily skewed to who you play, when you play, how often you play. But I think I think being a top 20 side means something in women's football, and the fact that the Tillies have been there for over 2 decades is phenomenal. So yeah, going in as the third best and 15th overall is, kudos to them.
And to your point, like you might be, for the Tillies, for example, a third place team, but there's so many other factors that play outside of this. Being a home tournament, potentially like third place is whatever it is, but you can really rely upon your home fans. There's a couple of factors. Even one that we haven't spoken about is like weather, for example.
Yeah.
For Australia, like playing in warmer conditions might suit them a bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe other countries or nations might not be prepared for those conditions. So it's something that can play into it, because it's normally March is hot, humid, all those factors could potentially play into some more open football potentially.
Yeah, it could also lead to fatigue. Playing games in a big stadium when it is hot, and like you mentioned, it's a 3-week tournament. These teams all need depth. Some of them have it, but it's going to be key when you're playing in heat.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it'd be reminiscent of us to not probably speak about the growth of women's football, not just women's football, but probably women's sport, because I think you look at obviously what happened in 2023 in the Home World Cup, and I feel like something like that was brewing, but we weren't sure when or what was going to happen. But I think like you've had a bit of a look into this, like the participation that came off the back of that home tournament was just incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy. The female participation just in football had double-digit growth. Over 220,000 females play soccer in 2024, and I'm not sure how this stacks up against other sports, but there's 16 million girls and females that play organised soccer worldwide. So for me, it's not just in football, right? At the moment, there's a huge surge in females in general playing sport. There's been those rock solid, tennis, swimming kind of avenues of sport that are still solid. They're still rising, but we're seeing a growth of new sports coming through. Football being one of them, basketball, rugby league. There's a real surge, and it's so exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things like, whilst we see the women's football side of it growing and the participation side, even like small little cultural trends, like you'll see potentially a young boy wearing a Sam Kerr, a Mary Fowler jersey, like not caring about who it is, but just loving the person for who it is.
Yeah.
And I think having another chance to have a home tournament in also such a short space of time where people will remember what happened, it can only be super beneficial for the Tillies, but also just women's football in general.
100%. No one's forgotten what happened in 2023. The Tillies had an amazing run. They didn't start off the way everyone expected, but gee, they finished off so well. Couldn't get on the podium in the end, but got so close. And the way the country rallied around the girls, around female sports in general, and like we just touched on, what's come off of the back of that is phenomenal. And I think, like you said, having two tournaments so close to each other just means that you can build on what was done 3 years ago. And yeah, it's exciting that it's here.
And I think we'll just go straight into it. But I think the thing that really plays into the Tillies' favour here is, like we said, 2023, we saw not just a small group of people supporting the Tillies, it was literally a whole nation.
Yeah.
I think like the England semi-final got to 11.7 million or something like that from a broadcast point of view. So if there's even a fifth of that support there for the Tillies, it's going to be a massive advantage for them. And if they can make the final, there's a full 80,000 strong stadium in Sydney that are willing to ride them the whole way home.
Yeah, 100%. yeah, you can't knock a home crowd advantage in football. It's the 12th man that everyone talks about. It happens across many sports, and yeah, football is definitely one of them.
100%. And then I think for the Tillies as well, probably it plays into their favour, but it's also probably a slight disadvantage. I probably explain why. I think what plays into their favour is the international breadth that they have.
Yeah.
Like the talent they have is everywhere across Europe, the US, a couple in Australia, but not as many. So it goes to show, I guess, if you're not of a quality football player, first and foremost, you're not going to get opportunities outside of Australia. Like
No.
you're not going to go to the US, you're not going to play in the UK or Europe in these big competitions. The bit that probably plays against them slightly, and I'm going a bit against the grain when I'm saying this, but the fact that they can't all play together, and the first time that they actually get to play is when they come into camp for these international friendlies.
Yeah.
And these camps are like 10, 14 days. They're very small windows within a whole calendar year, whereas other nations probably get to spend a little bit more time like fostering those relationships. So it'll be interesting to see whether that has any impact at all. But I feel like the Tillies have such a strong kind of bond that they've been building for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think they're used to it. You know, the international talent that we have in terms of where they play their football is not new. They've all been playing overseas for a really long time, at big clubs across the world, playing in big, stadiums in front of tens of thousands of people, and they're not. They're used to the big stage. So one good thing when you're a professional athlete is they're currently playing football, so they're going about their trade. So it's not so much when they come in, it's not so much about getting them fit and running up and down and things like that. It's more about keeping the fitness and then getting them to click as a group. As you said, they do have a great bond. This playing group has been together now for quite some time, with some changes potentially on the horizon. But for the most part, yeah, they'd be used to it, and when they come in, they know they've got to get about their work.
And I think talking about change, probably one of the big things for the Tillies here, I think it probably plays into their favour is having a new coach, being Joe Montemero. And Joe is actually, from a club point of view, he's been to multiple big clubs, like European clubs, Australian domestic clubs, but more importantly has coached a lot of the current Tillies players. So having that from now a national point of view, bringing them all back, they've all kind of had a bit more experience and play with different people. I think that's only going to be beneficial for the Tillies.
Yeah, 100%. There's a familiarity there, not just amongst the playing group, but with the coach, with the coaching staff, which will enhance what they have, what they want to bring, what style of football. That's obviously something Joe will have spoken to them about in the friendlies, and they've had that chance to come together and understand what they want to achieve. And I think it's obvious the achievement here, and I think, personally speaking, I think this is the time for this group of players to win something. I'm not sure that this group will get another chance.
I think it's a pretty fair assessment, because when you look at it, the next big tournament that's on the cards is 2027, being the FIFA Women's World Cup again. But this isn't just the Asia Pacific that's playing that. No. That is the world.
Yeah, 100%.
And we saw how tough that was.
Yeah, and like you touched on before, we're 15th in the world. Coming into a World Cup, those other 14 teams, traditionally speaking, will be there. So that your South American powerhouses, America, Canada, and all the European ones too. England just went back to back in the Euros. which is an unbelievable feat. So yeah, come that World Cup, there's going to be a lot more substance in the opposition that the Tillies will play against.
Definitely. And I guess I'll throw to you here, Coach, but when we look at, I guess, the big names for the Tillies and people that we should be aware of and know that they're going to be, I guess, a bit of a force to be reckoned with, who are some players that people should be looking out for from a Tillies point of view?
It's hard to go past the big names that probably most of the listeners are pretty aware of. So obviously Sam Kerr, she's at Chelsea. She has just come back from a long-term injury, but she's got some minutes under her belt, which is fantastic from an Australian point of view. She's recently had Ellie Carpenter join her. So Ellie was over in France playing at Lyon, and now she's moved over to Chelsea. So again, when you talk about that cohesion, that's great that they're playing at the same club, playing together, training together. So you can't go past those two. And then obviously Mary Fowler, recently coming also back from injury. Not sure she's got as many minutes in her legs as Sam has, but Joe picked her in the squad, which is fantastic. She'll likely occupy that, forward role from a midfield and probably sit just in behind Sam. So yeah, I think it's hard to go past those three big names. Caitlin Ford as well, another force up the top for us, which is fantastic. And, she just scored the winner for Arsenal in the inaugural FIFA Women's Champions Cup. So coming off a high there. So look, as we've touched on, we've got plenty of female talent at really big clubs around the world.
It's pretty incredible to think about, like, the amount of, like, the breadth of talent is just second to none.
Yeah, and where it has grown to as well. There's not a lot of players playing in the country in terms of like the Matildas, which you can argue both sides that it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. In terms of when you're getting up to playing on the international stage, you need to be playing against the best players in the world. That's what these girls are doing. And then when they're coming into camp, they're bringing not only their experiences, but everything they've learned from these massive clubs, these institutions of football.
They really are institutions. Like, they're just such powerhouses. And I guess when we look at Australia and the Asian Cup and what games they've got coming up, the Tillies will kick it off on the 1st of March, as Coach Dan spoke about, against the Philippines at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. That game is in Perth. The second game for the Tillies will be against Iran, and that's in the Gold Coast rather. 5th of March, 8 p.m. again, that's Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Any time that I'll say will be in that time, so I won't keep repeating myself. And then we've got South Korea. So South Korea is in Sydney. Funnily enough, it'll be on the 8th of March, which is also International Women's Day.
Beautiful.
So I think that's, if they can get a full crowd out to Sydney, I think that would be pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, look, when you look at the draw itself, you want Australia to have 6 points by the time that South Korea game comes along. It's probably likely that South Korea will also have 6 points. If things go the way of both countries, and then that game becomes pretty big in terms of where you end up when you progress through to the quarterfinals. So what we want from an Australian point of view is obviously to top the group. And then in topping the group, that will mean that we are on the opposite side of Japan. So Japan being, such a force to be reckoned with, assuming that both countries don't slip up, both countries win their groups, the only time we can meet is in the final, which would be magic for the game, for the country, for all of it, a great narrative. but plenty of work to do
to get to that point.
To get to that point, exactly.
So we mentioned probably, I think for the Tillies, South Korea is probably their hardest opponent, being in Group A. I guess of the Philippines and Iran, do you see either one of those teams being potentially not a bogey team, but maybe a bit of a dark horse in terms of giving the Tillies a run for their money?
Yes. Yeah. I think the Philippines for me is my dark horse. 2022 Asian Cup, they were the semi-finalists. So massive for such an upcoming footballing nation. And then 2023, they participated in their first ever World Cup. They actually beat New Zealand, who, if everyone remembers, in 2023 were also co-hosts with Australia.
Yeah.
So we know the crowds were crazy and unbelievable across both nations, and for the Philippines to go into New Zealand and beat them on home turf with the support that they also had, for me, that says a lot about this Philippine side. I don't know if they'll go all the way, but for me, I think they're probably making a little bit of a deep run into the tournament.
At least probably one of those minimum third place teams.
Yes, yeah, I think they're getting out of that group.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess when we looked from an Asian Cup and who potentially might win this tournament, so we've got 12 nations here. There can only be one that can win it at the end of the day. Coach Dan, where do you see this kind of playing out? Who do you kind of have as a winner in your eyes?
The winner in my eyes. Look, you have to look at every country. You need to look at the last tournament. It was 4 years ago. The winner of that was China in 2022. They'll want to go back to back, of course, but I think they'll make a deep run into this competition. But I'm not sure that they'll have what it takes. A lot of senior players from the 2022 side have retired. Yeah. China feels like they're in a bit of a rebuilding phase, which this tournament will be unbelievable for them, and probably a stepping stone into next year's World Cup, assuming they qualify.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'll be there or thereabouts. Obviously, my bias says the Matildas will get it done, and that is my hope. For them and the country. It's been a long time since we've won some silverware for the Tillies. So, yeah, look, my head says Japan, though. It's hard to go past them. They're such a complete team. The way they've been performing in Asia at the moment has been second to none. Very structured, very hard to break down. And their defense, I think, is what's going to get them very deep into this tournament.
And I guess if worlds align and it is Japan and Australia in the final,
yep.
From a Tilly's point of view, you mentioned there Japan are very structured. They know their way of football and they do it very well. Where do you see the Tillies potentially upsetting that style of play or potentially getting an upper hand on them in that instance?
That'll all come down to what formation Joe decides to play. For me, if they're very defensive, very structured, I think playing 3 up top will help break that down. Traditionally, a lot of teams play 4 at the back. If you've only got 1 or 2 up top, it's very hard to break them down. But when you've got 3 moving forward, plus you've got that central midfielder coming through, I think that's where we can disrupt them, plus a bit of creativity. And I think we've got that. The Tillies have that with Caitlin, with Sam, and with Razzo on the other side too, assuming they're all fit. And a big part of tournaments is depth. So, we'll come in with an 11 or 12 that, will start. And with time, we just need to keep them fit, stay on top of them. If that's going well, great. But who's coming in should, someone need a minute.
Yeah, and I think just for listeners at home, I guess from a formation point of view, talk about, I guess, the three up front.
Mm-hmm.
How would, I guess, the rest look just in the most simplest of form? Like, how would that?
Yeah. So usually when you're talking for a formation, you don't really consider the goalkeeper. That's always just one.
Yep.
And then you need 10 to make up the rest of the field. So look, if you're doing three up the top, the next best way to set it up is three in the middle.
Yep.
And then four at the back.
Yeah, okay.
So as I touched on before, four at the back is usually pretty standard. I think it's the way the Tillies have set up for a long, long time. But when you have three midfielders only, they've got to be workhorses.
Yeah.
They've got to be fit, up and down, left and right. That will be needed if those girls are given the freedom up top to, take on defenses and score. Then that midfield needs to be rock solid and kind of move together as a unit across the park.
Yeah, and I think Australia has that as well. Like, you've got, assuming they're fit and healthy, you've probably got Katrina Gorry.
Yep.
You've got Kyra Cooney-Cross.
Yep. Like,
from a midfield point of view, there's probably that transition period where Katrina probably led in the Women's World Cup, and Kyra was there playing a really good support role and really came into her own.
Yeah.
There's almost that transition now where Kyra, like, this is your team in the midfield, and I think that she's definitely up to that challenge.
Yeah, 100%. They worked so well together at that World Cup, and I don't see why that can't continue.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's the Asian Cup. I almost can't believe like how quickly it's come around, because the Women's World Cup felt like not that long ago, and now we've got another opportunity and hopefully time to win silverware. The last time we won was, I think, 2010.
Yes.
Which is...
on penalties, I believe.
Yeah. Crazy. So, look, hopefully from a Tillies and Australia point of view, they can get across the line, and we'll see what happens.
Indeed. Really looking forward to it. Should be a great tournament.
Well, Coach Dan, thank you for your analysis, mate. And thank you again for listening to the Sports Playbook. As we said at the start, we are your go-to for fast sport news, athlete stories, and insights. See you next time.